Hi folks, Blake here, hope you're well, and today I'm going to go over another beginner's guitar lesson. So last time we covered notes on the fretboard, how to find them and playing the chromatic scale. This time we're going to cover the major scale, so importantly which notes sound good together and how we build a key from that. In future lessons we'll talk about using the major scale to give us chords that are in a key and the functions of these chords. We're going to start with the C major scale, and it's the simplest major scale because it contains no non-natural notes. In other words, it contains no sharps and no flats. I mentioned in the last video that to remember where notes are on the fretboard, if we're going to stay on this one string, so the A string, and go from C here to C up here on the 15th fret, one way of doing it would be to say out the natural notes as we play them. Now fortunately for us, playing these natural notes from the C, so the 3rd fret here on the A string, up to the C up here, the 15th fret on the A string, will give us the major scale of C. So C, up 2 frets to D, up 2 frets to E, up 1 fret to F, up 2 frets to G, up 2 frets to A, up 2 frets to B, and up 1 fret to C. So depending on where you're from, you may be aware of the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and that's basically the C major scale, so do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So the important thing here is the intervals, so the distance between each of the notes, as that will stay the same for the major scale regardless of the note we start on. We have 2 frets from C to D, 2 from D to E, 1 from E to F, 2 from F to G, 2 from G to A, 2 from A to B, and 1 from B to C. So the order is 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 1. Now in more musical terms, we can say that a distance of 2 frets, 2 notes, for instance between D and E, is a tone difference, and a difference of 1 fret, for instance between E and F, is a semitone difference. So therefore this order becomes tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. So if we keep this tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone order, but we start on a different note and stay on one string again, we can play different major scales. If we start here, now you'll know from the last video, the link is in the cards in case you've not seen it, that this is a G, so the 3rd fret of the bass E string, and we do the same pattern going up the string, we'll get the G major scale. So we've got that same tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone order. Okay, so we know what notes make up the C major scale. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then we're back to C, the octave. But what notes make up the G major scale? I said earlier that the C major scale is the simplest because it has no non-natural notes, so it has no sharps or flats in its structure. When we go to G, it gets a little bit different. We have the notes G, up 2 frets or a tone to A, up 2 frets or a tone to B, up 1 fret or a semitone to C, up 2 frets or a tone to D, up 2 frets or a tone to E, up 2 frets or a tone to F sharp, and then up a semitone to G at the octave. Now we spoke in the last video how notes can be n-harmonic, so the F sharp, which is a semitone higher than F, could also be called a G flat, because it's a semitone lower than G. So how do we know in this case that we use the F sharp for the G major scale and not the G flat? Well, it's because every natural letter, in other words A, B, C, D, E, F, G, has to have a note present in the major scale. So when we're going through the G major scale, we've got G, A, B, C, D, E, and then this note, and then G. If we said that was G flat, we'd have two G notes, G flat and G, so it's an F sharp. Okay, so at this point we know the C and G major scale, and we know the pattern, that being tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone intervals between the notes. Or also, if we stay on one string, 2 frets, 2 frets, 1 fret, 2 frets, 2 frets, 2 frets, 1 fret. So we can apply this same major scale pattern starting at any note when we're staying on one string. So if we do it for the D major scale, in other words, starting on the open string, then we get D, up 2 frets to E, up 2 frets to F sharp, up 1 fret to G, up 2 frets to A, up 2 frets again to B, up 2 frets to C sharp, and up 1 fret to D. Okay, so that's great, but when we're playing major scales, really we want to be playing across strings, not only on one string. So remembering this tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone pattern can help us work out where to go moving down the strings. And if we remember from the last video, when we're moving from one string, like the bass E string, to the one below it, in all cases except when we're going from G to B, if we held our finger on the 5th fret, we'd get the same note. So an A on the E string, a D on the A string, a G on the D string, and right down here on the B string on the 5th fret, we get an E. The only difference is here on the G string, we do it on the 4th fret. So the 4th fret gives us a B. As mentioned, this is all in the previous video, so go and check that out. Link is in the cards above if you haven't already seen that, or any of this isn't making any sense. Okay, if you're still with me, then now we're going to try playing the C major scale but moving across strings. So starting here at the same position, so the 3rd fret of the A string, we can do it going over the A, D and G string as follows. So we're still playing the same notes, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and that keeps that same pattern. So what does that look like? We play the first 2 notes as before, so starting here on the 3rd fret of the A string, we can play this and then move up 2 frets to the D. We then move to the D string and we play on the 2nd fret. And this makes sense because we know it's 5 places back compared to the string above, as I've just mentioned. And if we look at the string above, when we'd play an E, it'd be here on the 7th fret. So rather than playing 7, 7 minus 5 gives us 2. So we play 3rd fret on the A string, 5th fret on the A string, 2nd fret on the D string. So we've done our tone, tone, now it's a semitone, so we move up 1 fret and play on the 3rd fret here of the D string. Then another tone moves us up to the 5th fret of the D string. Then again, if we were going to move on, it'd be another tone after that, so we could play it here, the 7th fret of the D string, but that is also the equivalent of the 2nd fret on the G string. And then one more tone gets us up to the B, which is the 4th fret here of the G string. Remember the 4th fret because the 4th fret of the G is the same as the open B below. And then a semitone gets us up to the C an octave higher, which is the 5th fret of the G string. So altogether that goes 3, 5 on the A string, 2, 3, 5 on the D string, 2, 4, 5 on the G string. I'd recommend playing this up and down and then you'll get the hang of the position. So, if it helps to say the name of the notes, then do so while you're playing. So C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C. Okay, so we can take this same pattern and we can apply it to a C pretty much anywhere on the guitar board. So if we now instead play a C here, so the 8th position of the E string, as you'll know again from the previous video, we can play that same order of notes and it'll give us again a C major scale, but this time starting at a lower position, so a C on the bass string rather than a C here, the 3rd fret of the A string. So if we go from the 8th fret of the E string, it looks like this: 8, 10, 7, 8, 10, 7, 9, 10 in terms of frets. And in terms of fingering, I'd argue to try and play it like I'm playing. So the 8th fret is always played by your middle finger, the 10th fret is always played by your little finger, the 7th by your 1st finger, and anything on the 9th fret is played by your ring finger. So here's what it looks like. Now these are fixed positions that we can play, but actually you don't need to be fixed. If you know the distance between the notes, you can play them wherever you want on the fretboard. So for instance, at the end of the last one, we have another C here, so that is the 10th fret of the D string. If we started the pattern again, we get the same thing, but because we're then moving from the G string to the B string, we move everything on the B string up 1 fret. So rather than playing what would be 9, 11, 12, we'd instead play 10, 12, 13 on the B string. But they're still just the same notes, so C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Okay, so at this point we know the intervals between the notes in the major scale. We know what notes are present within the C major scale and hopefully the G as well, if you remember that. And we can work out the notes of starting at any other major scale. And we can do that either on one string, which is the easiest way to start, or by then moving that to separate strings. So just to show you an example of using that same separate strings approach, but for the G major scale rather than the C. Again, wherever there's a G on the fretboard, you can do that same pattern. You can do the same pattern that we did down here for the C. So it's the G up here, 10, 12, 9, 10, 12, 9, 11, 12. So have a go at playing the major scale up and down the guitar fretboard and try applying it to begin at different notes. This is really important because it helps us to build chords, so in the next video we'll talk about what chords are present within the C major scale. Thanks very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please drop me a like, subscribe and hit the little notification bell that will alert you every time I put up any new videos. Thanks a lot, take care of yourself.